my certifications in PMP and Six Sigma were more market-driven by the work that we do. So right now, if you want to do work for the federal government, if you don't have a PMP, it's very hard to get to work because it's basically a requirement for anybody managing a project at the federal level. It's becoming a requirement. So we started seeing that about 10 years ago. So then I put myself and 7 other of my folks through PMP training, and proud to say that we all passed it on the first time. Some of us were probably closer to the borderline of pass-fail than others, but I hadn't taken such a structured exam in probably 25 years since I had taken my PE exam. So the Six Sigma, same thing. We've always done business process re-engineering work using pretty much the DMAIC approach. And I put myself and a couple of my folks, we went through the IISE Six Sigma Black Belt training, and we did it. We had a project we were working on with a Black Belt sponsor, and so we got our certification, and that was my journey.
Thank you. Orlando?
My journey has not been as exciting as these two gentlemen. It actually started while growing up. I was an IT director, and I was in charge of selecting and implementing an ERP system for the companies that I worked for. A group of manufacturing companies here in Miami in the construction, road construction, and housing development, etc. So I wish I would have been a Six Sigma. It would have helped me out select an ERP in a more reasonable, in a more direct, and a more efficient way. But nevertheless, I selected the ERP and implemented. Subsequently, I implemented that in 5 different manufacturing companies. Subsequent after that, for socioeconomic reasons, I declared myself an IT consultant, and I went on the road. And I wish I would have gone on the road a lot earlier because it's been very interesting. It really has taken me to different states, different countries, and it's been a beautiful thing. But I became associated with a group, an international group of consultants under the name of Epic Consultants. You guys know those guys?
Yes.
Well, I know them very well. I used to work with one of them, with 2 of them. And eventually we continue working. I'm always associated with them. I engage when there is something related to supply chain, especially on the areas of manufacturing. My expertise is manufacturing and distribution. I know some finance, because you cannot avoid to not learn some finance if you have implemented an entire ERP system. You gotta know that. If you don't, then you probably know the guy. So, this group introduced me to Six Sigma. And I asked them, so how is that going to help me? Just take it, go, and I understood then the benefit of becoming a Six Sigma. And I understood the reason why, and I understood between PMP and Six Sigma, the difference and the order that I thought, according to my opinion, should be learned and implemented.
Thank you. I would like to follow up on that with Orlando because you mentioned something very interesting. And personally, I work with Orlando, I work with Epic, and this is something that was always a curiosity of mine, and I think you might be thinking the same thing. Okay, but you're managing an IT implementation. What the hell does Six Sigma has to do with that?
I said the same thing. See, according to, in my opinion, and this is just strictly my opinion, so if I'm totally off here, please forgive me, You guys look like you are a forgiving group, so. You engage in a Six Sigma project when you do not have a solution yet. Once the solution has been established, defined, determined, now you have a project, and the project, especially on ERP systems, goes along part, envelopes that methodology. So, if I would have been a Six Sigma at the time of implementing when I was an IT director, I would have done better selection of phone systems, telecommunications, applications, development, etc. Regardless of the methodology for project management, waterfall, agile, etc. Six Sigma will tell you what needs to be implemented, what should be implemented, and the criteria. The criteria for selection and implementation. That's the advantage for to me.
Thank you. And Jorge,
Yes.
I'll give you the question you want to answer. How did PE help you, and what's the relationship between PE, PMP, Six Sigma? Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, yeah, so the PE for me was almost accidental. So when I was in graduate school here at the U, my girlfriend was a civil engineer, and she was studying for the FE exam, which back then was the EIT. Those of us that remember that. So, so I said, okay, well, I may as well study for it. I'm not going to pass it. I don't need it. And, lo and behold, shockingly, I passed it, right? So, well, this is the hard part because, you take the PE 5 years after once you're working, and if you have a master's, it's 4 years, PhD, it's 3 years. But I said, I may as well because I'm a believer that as many initials as you can put after your name, you should do if it's something that is of value to both your employer and yourself professionally. So once I was working, I sat for the PE exam, and I failed it the first time. And I said, well, I'm not going to let a PE exam bring me down. So I learned how to pass it, and I did the second time around. So the PE is something I think less than 10% of. I think most of us in this room are IEs. That less than 10% of IEs have. And I know Dr. Amachino has his PE also. And the PE has really helped me in my career. Before I started my company, I used to work for Miami-Dade County. I had various positions there, but my first 4 years there, I worked as an internal management consultant. And in government, there are a lot of engineering type departments. Building and zoning, public works, solid waste management. And my boss would always put me on those projects and take me to kickoff meetings and sell me as the PE. I didn't know anything about landfills. I didn't know much about construction or roads or transportation. But the fact that I was able to kind of talk the engineering language really brought great value. And then as I progressed through my county career, the last position I had, I was the assistant director of an office that oversaw the implementation of the building code. This was right after Hurricane Andrew in 1992. There were a lot of changes going on, but that position required that you either be a PE or an RA, registered architect. So the PE has been, for me, a very beneficial license. It's not a certification license, but so it's just as important as the PMP and the Six Sigma. Probably used the PE more in my career.
That's very cool. And Juan?
Yeah, I took the AIT myself.
Yeah.
Here with Dean Lucas.
Go for it.
So for me, you mean how did it help me?
I have one for you, but if you want to pitch in that, it's good.
You remind me of the AIT. That's a long time ago.
So dating ourselves in this young.
Yes, we are.
So if anybody don't know, GE is one of the companies that if they didn't create the Six Sigma, it was the company that embraced and made Six Sigma what it is today.
No,
So,
they didn't create it.
Huh?
They didn't create it. There was Motorola.
Yeah.
Motorola, yeah.
Yeah.
So, and so on, and you spend many, many years
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
How do you think they were able to sustain that passion for Six Sigma for so many years?
Well, you had a guy named Jack Welch that did whatever he said. But I think what not only Jack Welch, but the entire GE company said, you know, we have to be competitive. There's a methodology that is going to help us do better products. It's going to help us engineer better products. And they embraced it. And what I mean embraced it is they threw a lot of dollars, resources to that particular initiative, right? And the way they did it is that, you know, it started up with Jack, and then they created an entire organization based on quality, and in GE, a Six Sigma organization. And they started the training with everybody. They hand-selected people to start training first, specifically in the engineering and manufacturing world first. And then they had each year, once they got everybody trained and the foundation was set, they started building how are we going to deploy it in the company. So what happened was that they created an initiative on a project. And that particular project was with the medical division. They said, we are going to design our next CRT tubes and all those machines that they designed. I was in the medical division, so I don't know exactly, but I knew it was one of those products. And they actually did two things. They developed a DFSS initiative, Design for Six Sigma initiative, and then, of course, the DMAIC route. And they tried that on that project. And they took measurements, and they said, well, you know, the project was a winner, not only from a technology standpoint, but out in the field, it performed a lot. So then they did another initiative next year. Well, now that we did this, let's have another initiative based on something totally different. Let's try customer service. How do we improve our customer service? And they did a bunch of black belts through the resource of that. So every year they said, okay, we're in the right track. And then the whole deployment came. And that's how they did it. They organized it, they had the people, they had the resources. And then as time progressed, when you worked for GE, you had to have at least do you had to be certified, but you had to do the test. The certification came after. You had to be recognized. You had to be on a certain level as an employee. GE had, at that time, 3 different sectors of employees. They have the top 20, the middle 70, and the bottom 10. So if you're in the bottom 10, you're not going anywhere. You're going out the door, actually. But if you're in the top 20, or that middle 70, you were considered for certification. And then you went through that route. And depending how you wanted to do, you did your certification. I did my certification in Charlottesville, Virginia. There, they had a facility that they have CNC controls. At that time, FANUC, GE FANUC, which is still one of the best controls in the world as far as CNC machines are concerned. I did my certification there at Charlottesville, North Carolina, Virginia.
Very good. Thank you.
I
Jorge,
actually
have a question?
follow-up question.
Absolutely.
Because I was going to ask. So recently, GE CEO made an announcement that they were going to abandon Six Sigma.
Yeah.
What do you think of that?
I think GE is going in a different direction that I don't particularly care for. I think he's trying to save a lot of what, because as you know, GE had a crash, right? Jeff Immelt left, or they kicked him out. I don't know which one happened. He's no longer there. So I think what he's doing is he's taking the different businesses and he's trying to financially trying to bring them alive. But I think he's going to get a lot of resistance. I still talk to people from there. I don't think it's going to happen, honestly. I think he'll get a lot of resistance from that. The problem is that you have to throw a lot of dollars to continue that, and I think that's where he's, thinking about it.
Do you feel he doesn't understand the value of what it
No,
does?
I think he comes from an area that he understands it.
Okay.
I think he comes from that area. And that area is one of the biggest
Mhm.
Six Sigma organizations in the world.
Yes, yes, yes.
So I just don't think it's not going to happen.
Thank you. Jorge,
Yes.
from your experience within Lean Six Sigma and PMP, how do you feel they complement each other? So they're a little bit different. Orlando talked a little bit about
Yeah.
how they complement. How, in your experience, how you feel they complement?
Well, I think from a technical perspective, they both apply kind of a methodical, scientific approach to problem solving, right? If you look at the MAIC versus the 5 phases of the PMP, starting with project initiation, it's kind of they're very parallel. So I think they're very, very complementary. The PMP, I think is a much broader, has a much broader applicability than to just, process improvement and the things that Six Sigma addresses. But, when you look at it then from a professional standpoint, right, they're both very valuable to have. From a financial standpoint, you look at the salary surveys, I was reading some, pretty consistent across the board, 20 to 25%, higher salary for those that have a PMP, those that have Six Sigma black belts. Green belt is not at that 20 to 25%, a little bit lower, but certainly higher than those that don't have it. They bring value to an organization, both of them. I talk about them, in my experience, it's become, for certain projects, a requirement. So I think there's a lot of parallels, a lot of complementary things between both of them, and I think they're both really important to have. I would say if you're, I think the Six Sigma is more niche, depending on what you're doing, and the PMP is broader.
Thank you. Orlando, how do you leverage having those 2 certifications? You have Lean Six Sigma and you have PMP. How do you leverage that when you're doing an ERP implementation?
I was afraid you were going to ask that. No. In my experience, they are complementary. As you remember, I said before, you engage in a Six Sigma project while trying to find a solution. The solution on a manufacturing company could be implementing a new ERP system or modifying the current system to execute better integration, better calculations, or additional functionality based on based on the DMAIC. You guys, I hope you know what that means, right? So concept is not a problem. So, but you have gotten the solution. The solution says, let's implement an ERP. And this ERP needs to have this criteria. So it helps through the selection process and further through the implementation process. And even while you're implementing the ERP, you realize that there are other things that could be initiated or improved with Six Sigma projects. Example, it kind of assumes a lot of things to implement an ERP. It assumes that there's inventory control. A lot of times inventory is out of control. What do you have to do? A 5S process to get that in control, and then the ERP can take over. So while you are implementing your ERP, there's a lot of areas that you can discover through Six Sigma and actually improve the overall implementation.
Thank you. And Juan, you transitioned from being a full-time black belt and being all over the world,
All over the world.
just running projects.
Yeah.
And now you're in operations role.
Yeah.
That is very strict and very directed to one thing.
Yeah.
How was that experience of changing, and how you feel that the knowledge from the projects help you in this new role?
Well, that's a great question, because the different roles, right? More in operations and managing that. But I think what helped me was that, as I said before, we were a group of black belts in this particular division of GE, which is industrial and controls. That's the divisions that I was in Plainville, Connecticut. We were a group of black belts that were assigned to different projects, right? Problem solving. So we could go down to Mexico to solve a problem in manufacturing. We could be in Florida to solve a problem with customer support. We could be in another division to solve a problem with accounting. So I got to know a lot of the different businesses and how they operated. And you have to know them and understand them because you're trying to solve problems with a group of people. We would get an assignment that says, okay, they're having a problem with the order management, order entries. They're late. They don't know why. So we go out there and start. They'll give us a group of people, the process owners, and we'll start working with them in the different areas. So the transition, when I got to my current position, I said, well, I happen to know a little bit about accounting, a little bit about manufacturing, inventory management, and so I'm not an expert on it, but I have enough knowledge to understand them. So that helped me a lot of transition. I remember when I first got this job that I met with the owner of the company, and I said to him, listen, I've never seen a walk-in cooler in my life, but I know things that you don't, and I can help you. And that's how it was. So I guess being a black belt and being exposed to the different areas for the businesses, doing the process analysis, understanding is what made me do that transition, right? And we'll talk a little bit more later. I do want to talk about something specific because we're talking about project management and Six Sigma. I have a specific project that I want to talk about at the right time.
So we're going to go back to questions to all participants. So I had it phrased as in how, but I'm going to ask if. Did the certifications change your life somehow? If so, how? If you want to start.
Oh, wait. As far as I'm concerned, it did. I mean, it changed my career. It totally changed my career. I was an engineering manager, and the next thing I knew, I was helping do acquisitions, right? I mean, I never dreamed I was going to do that, right? To me, it was a great move. Right? Remember when I said to you guys, my boss said, you're going to move in that direction, and I did. And not that he forced me or anything, but I saw the opportunity, and I knew that at GE, you would go further with that certification. So to me, it changed my career and my life because I think process, right? That's the way I think naturally. You start thinking in that direction. So to me, the certification, the experience, and having been in those roles have helped my career tremendously. I can tell you enough about that.
George?
Yeah, I echo that. These certifications have helped put good food on the table. If you just look at it from an economic perspective. Again, you got to want to do it, by nature. I think deep down somewhere, I'm a very academic person. So I actually enjoy sitting for the exam. My PMP process was very interesting because, as I mentioned before, I hadn't taken this kind of standardized type tests in 20, 25 years when I took the PMP, and I remember sitting in the class with 7 of my employees and a teacher, an instructor, right? You have to take the 35 hours of classroom training, and I found myself completely contrary to what she was saying. I said, that's not the way it works in the real life. Gold plating, all that stuff. In my line of business, if you don't go above and beyond, there's 15,000 other companies just waiting for the work that I'm getting. So I had to adjust my frame of mind to pass the exam. Not saying I disagree with the whole PMP methodology in totality, but it was a challenge. But it's something that I needed to, for us to move on. And, in our line of work, like I mentioned before, without the PMP, we would be doing a lot of different type of work that, I don't know that it would have been as rewarding as what, I'm doing now.
Okay. Orlando?
I think I made it easy, but like I said before, you could think of several solutions for a problem once you determine how do you know which is the best solution. But here's where Six Sigma comes in. They helped me out, determine that the solution is reasonable, that I have gone through the process of define, measure, analyze. And when you go through that, it's like looking at introspect at what is that you're really looking for the benefit of the organization and the team. And there's a very important part of, and my job has been a very important part, making the decisions that impacts the company and impacts the team. You talk about the PMP certification. I do the PMP certification because it was required for implementation. We had at least some practical experience, especially in the procurement, in the inventory, in a general idea of how practical, because there's a lot of questions, but I'm going to ask you that if you have not done it, you can read several books that is not going to go through. So my PMP was a requirement for employment purposes. So after doing that, then I became a Six Sigma. And it has improved my life and make me more efficient in finding solutions.
Great, thank you. And you guys know running projects is interesting. What is the coolest, most memorable story of a project that you have? Do you want to start, Jorge?
Yeah.
Or Juan, start?
Yeah. I'll start. Sure.
Good, that gives me time.
Okay. Well, it's always I had a story, and maybe this is the good opportunity. Jorge was talking about the overlap of project management and Six Sigma and all of that. And one day I got a call and it says, we have a software product. It's not jump. So I go up to Plainville, Connecticut, meet with the project manager and the product manager, because we have product managers and project managers. Product managers are those who define the product for engineering and says, I need So I said, look, let's do this. Yeah, that's exactly what
When does that happen? Never.
Nothing was on time. And I said, well, I think what we need to do is take each feature and start seeing how are we going to do it and why do we want to do it. So at GE, we had understood me, and they went along with me, and they said, yeah, and all of that blend together made the project happen. And we were in time, we did it right, and it was interesting because being a software product, really came together well in this particular project.
Do you mind if I jump in?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes,
So I have a question because we're working on a project just kind of like how you're describing.
really.
Just like the product management, the product owners of the company, they're like IT.
Yeah.
And then you have the developers. So which advice will you give us industrial engineers to get the product owners to hear our ideas and what we think it should be done and how it should be done, so like IT doesn't kind of take over the whole project
Take over the
without
whole
hearing the business?
Yeah, well, I think what happens is a lot of the Jack Welch was just going out, and Jeff Melt was just coming in, and GE decided to build a new company called GE Security, and they bought security businesses, and we bought one in Sarasota called Edwards. They do all these fire things. So I was faced we code and we test, right? I said, if I was to start really measuring your code and doing an analysis and do a Six Sigma analysis in your code, you probably have a lot of misses, right? And you're probably not doing this right. And taking a long time. So to answer your question, I think that you need to sell that. I don't know how they're going to test that product that you're doing. I don't know how you're going to make an accurate software product without really doing all of these things, right? What does your test cycle look like? How often are you going to test? How are you going to measure that test? Is it going to be an automated test? How? So you have the power to measure what they can do utilizing Six Sigma tools. Right? So my advice to you is tell them that you have tools that can help them not only organize it in a structured way, but also measure as you go along how well is your project doing. That would be my advice to you. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you.
Orlando, before we continue, do you have anything to pitch in on that? Because you've been in many IT projects on how can we help her getting to a better consensus on Six Sigma and IT?
Hire him as a consultant.
From an organization point of view, a lot of the projects that you get involved that has to do with implementing applications appear to be IT projects, and that's wrong. Those are people's projects. You need the involvement of people, the understanding of the requirements from those that are involved in the process. IT only helps. I learned that After I became a consultant, I sat at the side of the customer. Because prior to do that, I was a pretty good dictator. An IT director needs to be, especially when the organizations are not well structured from an information technology point of view. You need to be, you need to enforce certain rules, etc. And you take the customer service kind of out of the picture. So someone gives you to implement a purchasing system. So what do? You implement based on your criteria as an IT guy, which is kind of narrow. You need to get the people involved. I can say that after I became a consultant, I learned what the customer was really looking for. If, as an IT guy, I could design a wheel that was a triangle, will never move, right? But as a customer service, if I get involved into the customer service, I will find out exactly what they want and be able to deliver the product. And if you look at the criteria, analyze, measure, and then comes in the improvement, and finally you can control it, it's a success. That's where 16 comes in. Yes.
Prior to being in faculty, my role was in IT management for many years. And I always used to say, the software is just a tool because it's still a process that you have to manage.
Absolutely.
Ultimately, you know, to add to that, if you can't satisfy the business and customer needs, it doesn't really matter because computer just makes it go faster. And if it's crap, it's just faster crap.
It's true.
I mean,
Exactly.
you know, computers don't think, you know, software doesn't think unless you get it the right stuff to think with.
Yeah.
Correct.
I totally agree with that.
Yeah, and in fact, after that project, they realized that how much this helped them, visualizing everything, all the different areas. And once they said, "Oh, this is the functionality that we need," they went and developed it, and they had structured how to do that. So it was a payoff for them. They actually realized that after the project was done, because we were on time. We delivered on time and delivered what the company wanted.
I have one question. Since you're a recovered dictator, how would you say to deal with someone who is still a dictator, an IT dictator?
You had to make that point. IT.
There is hope for you. Can you rephrase the question, please?
So, since you've been on the role of being in the dictator role still.
Okay. You need to bring them to the understanding that what they're doing is to help a team of people that are going to benefit from the implementation of an IT system. Is not for the benefit of IT, it's for the benefit of the people. When you understand that, then you have beginning to cross the borders of being a dictator to being a little more diplomatic, let's say. Yeah. It is not until you sit with a customer and the customer is a client. So you don't have that ownership. It's very interesting. When you come out with a great idea and you tell your manager, the owner of the company, about your idea, he will listen, he will sit on it, but if he comes a consultant from outside and says exactly the same thing, they will go for it. I don't know how that works. So I've been in both sides. I was an IT director for many years. Yeah. When I went on the other side, and so when the customer specifications came in, I was in charge of development of portions of an ERP. I worked at Russell Stover Candies. That was a great job. I used to get chocolate all the time. And I volunteered to do the testing of
I knew it. You were gonna say.
Why sugar-free? Because I'm sweet to begin with. So that was my. All right. So the customer required analysis, and the business analyst had to be warned from a customer point of view. What are they really looking for? If your sales department is looking for certain figures, and these are based on the finance figures that you report every quarter, then this needs to make sense to both groups, both the finance gurus and customer service. And that's what I understood, that from an IT point of view, I would not have been able to visualize that. You need to be on the customer side as well. Yeah.
So George, memorable experience.
Remember, well, there's been quite a few. So
Pick one.
but I think you asked what was the coolest
Yeah.
project, and I've had some time to think now. So, and it all depends on your definition of cool, right? So how do I define a cool project? Well, one, where we like to work. Two, where our client implements our recommendations. And three, is there something we're learning also? So we have a contract at NOAA, the National Marine Fisheries Service, Fisheries, where we were hired to look at one of their grant programs. Very small in the federal grant dollar perspective, only $10 million a year, but very visible, and from a congressional and from elected body. We mapped it out. It was a 425-day life cycle for one grant. So that means that they're essentially working on 2 grant cycles at the same time. So through a lot of travel throughout the country, interviewing stakeholders, looking at the process, looking at their regional offices. One in Honolulu, we had to travel there.
That's
It's rough. But we were able to cut 108 days off their life cycle, and these were recommendations that we came up with 20 recommendations. They were implemented. Most of them we created a kind of the quick hits, short-term, mid-term, and long-term implementations, and it's really led to some policy changes. And our client liked it so much that we actually did this like a carrying case of these process maps that, the longest one was like 8 feet, and we laid out across this whole table, and our client actually took it home and looked at it with his wife one night, and we joke about it, what are you doing for date night tonight, looking at our wow, you get to get a life. But anyway, all kidding aside, that to me is gives me such a level of satisfaction, because in the consulting world, many times the work that we do, just sits on a shelf. And, while I like the compensation part of it, I also take a lot of pride in my work and the work that we do. And so it's important for us to implement our work. So that contract was a 1-year contract. They added a second year. Now we're on a 6-month extension, only because contractually they could only give us a 6-month extension. The client has said, we're going to scale this to all our grant programs, and we're going to put out the contract in a few months. So it's still something we need to compete. And I learned a long time ago, I don't take anything for granted, so we got to put our best proposal forward. But the other part of the coolness to me is that I have people walking around my office now that can tell you about species of shark, what aquaculture is, fish farming. We created this thing we call the fishery supply chain, which is all the way from catch fish and grow fish to consumption and everything in between. So that's been a really cool project.
Any questions?
Quick question.
Go for it.
So you guys have spoken on both, right? And as opposed to which one's better, maybe a simpler question is, do you need both? And if not, which one would you drop?
I'll take the first shot at that.
Go ahead.
I would tell you that no one is better than the other. I think whatever certification is what's needed for the job that you're in is what you should pursue. Where you want your career to go is what you should pursue. I would tell you that they're both valid. They've both been valuable for me in different ways. There might be something else out there, you know. Should you get an MBA? You know, what are you going to do to bring more value to your employer and to grow professionally? So I wouldn't even stop at PMP or Six Sigma. I will, because that was your question. As I mentioned before, to me the PE has been very valuable. If you ask Dr. Omachinu, he'll tell you that we've had discussions over many years about me pursuing a PhD. You know, because I think for consulting and it would be good. It's funny because I worked on a project with one of your faculty, Dr. Urkosh. We did some modeling and simulation for Miami International Airport to try to optimize passenger throughput through the customs area. And I got up there and I talked and I did my thing. We did a presentation to management, and he got up there and it was like a different world. He's also very bright and he's a great presenter. But I really think, in the consulting world, the fact that he had a PhD really kind of put the seal on that level of expertise. I think some people might disagree with that, but and then you never know where your career is going to take you. When I got my PE, I never knew I was going to need it for one of my county positions that I mentioned before. Maybe at some point in time, I want to take the Nina Neville route and become a full-time faculty member. Once you start your doctorate,
And I have
So-
none of them.
Well, but you have your doctorate.
I have my doctorate,
Yeah,
but
so-
I don't have a PE, I don't have a
Right.
PMP, and I don't have a Six Sigma certification.
So anyway, my long-winded answer to tell you, I think it depends on your circumstances. If you can do both and they're going to add value, do them both. I wouldn't take one over the other unless you're not working in, for instance, in a Six Sigma, in a lean, in a process environment. You want to be a
So, which one would you pick first? Like, which one would you start with? Would you have started with? Sorry.
I think I know we're not really talking about the PE, but I would have definitely done the PE first, and I would tell you, some of these certifications require you to have, well, I think all of them require you to have a certain level of experience, right? You don't just graduate from school and get your black belt. You can't just graduate from school and get your PMP. There's the kind of the junior level certification for project management. But you need like 4,500 hours of work experience in each of the PMP project management phases in order to even qualify for the exam. So you don't just graduate from school and do it. But I would tell you, while you're still a sponge and your brain is active and you're still kind of in that learning mode, do them, whichever one you're going to do it early. I think in my line of work, I think probably the PMP first, only because, like I mentioned before, it's broader, and what I do in my line of work is broader than what these two gentlemen have done.
Thank you. So I'm going to give this question, and then I'll come back to you too for this question.
Question for you. I had already considered doing like the FE exam, and then when I was looking at like job postings for the government, every one of them required the FE. So my question is, like, if the deadline to apply to a job is before your exam to take the FE, do you have any advice for that, or any way to like talk to an employer, say, oh, I'm going to have the certification by the time I graduate?
Yeah, the problem is, see, if to get in the door, so I think it depends, where you apply. Many years ago, as president of the UM Engineering Alumni Association, I met with the dean, and I tried to urge the dean to require the FE for all graduating engineering students. It wasn't a very popular thing, and part of it is, I think, and again, this is mostly industrial, we haven't justified a value for it, right? So if you're civil, you need a PE. Electrical a little bit, mechanical a little bit, right? If you're doing design, signing and sealing plans. Industrial, we don't sign or seal anything, so there's that value hasn't been put on licensure. So what the dean commented at that time was, people are going to show up to the test, they're going to put their name, and they're going to mark A or B or whatever letter you mark all the way down, and our numbers are going to be very poor. So he was looking at it from kind of a metrics standpoint, how it would reflect on the college, and all these things go into accreditation. I think, I don't know if the FE does, but I think in your question, it really depends on what job it is you're applying for.
Yeah, it makes
FE easier in some respects, and now it's discipline specific.
I have a guy in my office who's 45 years old and never pursued the PE, and now he's thinking about it because it is discipline specific. He doesn't have to learn circuits again, thermo, fluids, structure.
Over, yeah, well, I wouldn't change the thing, but I think he's right on. I mean, it all depends. In my case, I took the EIT, and I didn't pursue my BE. Why? Because I was working for the company that really didn't require it. I was in a career path that I was happy with. Things were working for me, so I didn't pursue it. Now, I wish I would have, but I didn't. But that didn't hinder my career. To the question of which one is better, I don't think there's an answer for that. I think they complement each other. I think they both do different things, although very equally at times. So I don't think there's a right answer to go this way or this way. I think you have to feel where you're going and see what the path is, and maybe you need both of them at one point, right? So I think you just have to feel your way through and see what happens. But for me, I guess the only regret that I have is that I wish I would have continued more in the academia that I did, because I enjoy it. And the reason that I do is because I get to teach a lot of Six Sigma to a lot of people, right? And I felt myself, well, I can do this. I can elaborate on this thing, and I felt that maybe I should have done that, but it's never too late. You're right.
Subliminal message.
But I enjoyed it.
Apply for the PE tomorrow.
There you go.
Orlando, which one would you have gone for first, or would you have gone for one and not the other?
Well, the question is, if you had the chance to do it all over again, man, would I do different things?
I think he's talking about certification.
Thanks for clarifying.
The PMP certification has worked out more, has been more applicable because of the nature of the jobs that I got involved. I've been an ERP manager, and I've been an ERP project manager. The ERP manager stays for the long run. The ERP project manager stays during the duration of the project. And the good thing about the project is it has to have a beginning and has to have an end. When the project ends, the project manager stays, the ERP manager stays, the project manager continues into another thing. So, having said that, Six Sigma would have helped me making better decisions. As a consultant, you realize, I realize what you do. you recommend people to do things that you could do for yourself. And as such, those solutions have an impact. And if you don't think it thoroughly, years after the implementation of the project, someone may regret the direction that took because you didn't do a necessary analysis. You didn't measure enough. You did not really improve things. And therefore, do you think did you control anything? No. So Six Sigma helps. I can see that. And one of the coolest things that I've seen successful Six Sigma projects in action, where people are involved, where people believe on the system, the methodology, and they're looking for the next thing to do on the project to make the whole thing better. I've seen this with the folks from Epic Consultants and the Colombian projects working with the flower business. Those people are involved. My God, they talk about during lunch on their faces, on what they're doing, what are their considerations, and the solutions that they are arriving. So when we, the consultants, get over there, they have tons of questions that normally would not be there unless you are really involved and enthusiastic about a Six Sigma project.
So following up on that, okay. So what was your most memorable, coolest experience with
That
projects?
was it. By looking how involved those people in the Colombia bouquet factories were, I took the Six Sigma education at Florida International University, and then I went to a project. I went and engaged in a company, an international company, that took me to Haiti. I planned the projects for Rwanda, Malawi, Sierra Leone, but I came back eventually to Miami, my headquarters, and got involved again with Six Sigma. And then I went in to work with the Epic folks in the Colombian companies. And that's where I saw. And I was happy to see that some methodology is being accepted and people are using and they are happy to do it. That to me was cool.
Thank you. And you mentioned a little bit about it in your previous answer. So when do you think is the right time for a student or a young professional to pursue their certification?
Oh, well, I think probably before they graduate, they should get their certification. I think that will be on your resume that you're certified, and I believe that will be looked at. That you took the time not only to get your degree, but you get that important certification, which would be very applicable in what you're going to be doing, especially in technology and engineering, things like that. So I would say just before you graduate, get it.
I hired in the last year 2 IE students, and partly because they had the green belts.
There you go.
Because the department is
For students.
the department is putting them through green belt training.
That's good.
And
We offer it every
Yeah,
June.
that's a great move.
And that's excellent, and that helped them.
I believe that will be the case. Yeah.
Orlando?
I happen to agree. Yes, get the certification. The hard working and the grades don't show that.